Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Spurs Up Show. It's game week. This is episode 14 of the Spurs Up Show. We're going to dive into everything, previewing the NC State matchup the Gamecocks have in Charlotte this Saturday. But first, if you do want to follow the Spurs Up Show, be sure to check us out on iTunes at the Spurs Up Show. Be sure to go there, rate and subscribe. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like about the show. We appreciate all the feedback from all of our listeners. Also, be sure to follow us on our Twitter account at ArmchairSCAR. That's Armchair at Armchair SCAR. Also, this is a podcast brought to you by the Armchair All-Americans. Armchair All-Americans, localizing your sports coverage content. Be sure to check us out there on armchairawlamericans.com for the podcast and, of course, all your latest breaking news with the South Carolina Gamecocks. And also follow us on our Instagram account at ArmchairSCarolina. Be sure to check us out on there as well. So, as always, I'm your host, Chris Phillips. I'm joined, as always, again by my colleague, Tyler Clark. And, Tyler, like I mentioned, it's game week, and I got to ask, like I do every week, how you feeling coming into a game week? We're just now recording this on Wednesday night. We're just 3 days out from kickoff. Feels like we've been waiting all summer, and it's finally here.
It's unbelievable. Like, I feel like we were just counting it down from like 35 days. We got another month. But being back at school, walking around campus, seeing a ton of people wearing Carolina shirts, it's kind of getting real.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been doing the countdown on Twitter every day, the however many days and the corresponding play or whatever, and it's crazy. I just remember doing it when it was like 60 days away, and now I'm sitting there, I'm like, man, like 3. Tomorrow will be 2. I'm just like, oh my God. So it snuck up on us. Talking season's almost over, and we're going to get into everything NC State and really break down the Wolfpack in just a second. But first, I want to talk about, Tyler, a couple of interesting developments that happened with the South Carolina depth chart, which was released yesterday. Will Muschamp had his weekly presser that he will be having all throughout the season. Had his weekly presser with the media yesterday. First, I know you were probably able to take a chance to look at the depth chart. And first, I'll ask you: was there anything that really stood out to you? Anything surprising with all the position battles we had going on? Was there anything that stood out to you right off the bat?
I don't know if it surprised me, but Shi Smith starting a wide receiver is really cool. That makes me really excited because I saw what Ortre did and what he's capable of. We've seen the pictures, the videos just from practices, and for them to think Shi Smith's better and they've seen more out of him, that's pretty good. On defense, I don't think really anything surprised me. And I thought it was smart that they put and they put all 3 running backs. So we're going to get a steady dose of all of them.
Yeah, Muschamp also said in the the press conference that he thought Rico would start the game. A.J. Turner would probably be in there by the 3rd or 4th series. Tyson will get his touches. So it definitely sounds like they're planning on using all 3 running backs and using them often. I mean, Bobby Bentley obviously said throughout fall practice that he's not afraid to just give the ball to the guy with the hot hand. It's not going to be so much about, who they want to start or anything, but if a guy gets hot, they're going to kind of stick with him. So
yeah, I love it.
But you've got the 3-headed monster there. I agree with you with the Shi Smith. I'm not so much sure if it's that Shi Smith is that much better than Ortre. I just think it's with Shi in the slot. I think where they're going to use him, it really fits his skill set, being a smaller guy at 5'10", 179 pounds. But yeah, I've heard great things about Ortre. I know you said how good he looked at the practice. Big physical guy. I think that'll complement Brian Edwards very well. But yeah, Shi Smith's a guy that'll be electric for South Carolina, and obviously just goes to show. It's crazy to think he was only on campus for 3 weeks and he earned a starting position. So I think that says a ton about Shi Smith and his ability. Obviously one of the bigger position battles that'll be really important come Saturday was at left tackle. Malik Young, as we expected, gets the nod there. He's backed up by Dennis Daly, but it definitely sounds like to me from listening to Coach Muschamp in his press conference yesterday that they plan on, playing Dennis Daly. And I think Dennis Daly really looked a lot better than a lot of the coaches or that Muschamp himself really expected. A kid coming out of JUCO, really big kid, 6'6", 330. So it'll be interesting to see how the reps are divvied up there. You hope that Malik Young will be, good enough to where, they really won't have to bring in Daly at all. But if they do, it's good to know they've got a guy to spell Daly that is as capable as, Dennis Daly is. Dennis Daly is. So that'll be a really interesting thing to watch. I also thought really was interesting on the defensive side of the ball, Dante Sawyer or Keir Thomas.
Yeah.
That one kind of surprised me a little bit. I think everybody sort of assumed that it'd just be the seniors up front with Ulrich Jones, Stallworth, and Dante Sawyer. And then obviously the sophomore DJ Wanham. But Really interesting, Tyler, to see Keir Thomas. He got a little bit of playing time last year. I'm not sure that he had his best possible season. I think he was kind of just thrown in the fire early, like a lot of Gamecocks were. But what are your thoughts on Keir Thomas? Maybe a guy we haven't talked about quite as much as some others this preseason, but a guy that I think the sky's the limit for him.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely had his flashes last year. There were a ton of times in the post game, Keir would get just a few plays, but Muschamp would be complimentary of him and saying that he could play more. So, I mean, it is kind of scary seeing him listed with the senior and Sawyer. But I mean, I think Sawyer's going to have a great year too. I think they can both be really good. Yeah,
and I definitely think Sawyer's a guy that I think he has the capability to have a great year, and he's a guy that really needs to be a senior and step up on that defensive line, lead a guy like Keir Thomas, lead a guy like a DJ Wanham to reach in their full potential. And then another thing I noticed on the defense, starting nickel, Jamias Williams, goes into showing the importance of recruiting. The kid out of Decula, Georgia, comes in starting from day one. This is something I think me and you both kind of had a feeling could very well possibly happen, and it's just crazy to see that, he'll be starting game one at the nickel. Going to be a tall task, but I think we talked about it a little before. NC State, they do have a very capable quarterback and decent passing game with Ryan Finley, which we'll get to in a second. But I think this is a really good game to kind of work Jamias in a team that's maybe not so much spread. He won't be tested quite as much, even though, like I said, NC State does have some capable athletes. But it'll be awesome to see 21 out there and to really see what he can do, on the big stage in front of what should be a really great crowd in Charlotte. So
all 5'9" of them.
All 5'9" of them. Yeah, exactly.
It's funny watching them run around.
Yeah, he's one thing to point to. It shows he's actually the backup corner to Rashad Fenton, which sort of shows the lack of depth in the secondary, which we know well of. I mean, the other corner position is Jamarcus King, and he's backed up by Chris Lamons, who is listed right now as the starting safety. So while there is a lot of talent there is a little bit lack of depth. It's going to be absolutely key for South Carolina to keep those guys healthy and get back the other guys injured they have right now. One quick shout out I want to give to you, Tyler, with the expert reporting from the fan night was Joseph Charlton. He was a guy that we kind of, we're didn't really know a whole lot about, and we're even sort of skeptical about after that night. But Joseph Charlton gets the nod at punter.
Yeah, it really surprised me that I was right about that, because I was simply just going by what I saw with my eyes, because I had never heard of him other than doing the player pages for our website. That's the first time I ever saw him. But he's got a lot to live up to from Sean Kelly. But Sean Kelly didn't have a great year last year because he was hurt most of the year and he was playing injured. But hopefully it won't be a big step down. I don't think it will be. We definitely need to win some field position battles on Saturday.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, Michael Allman, the crazy thing is he actually punted in the bowl game. So to think that Charlton took the job from him, I think that he's probably definitely got the capability, and it'll be interesting to see. Hopefully he doesn't have to punt it all Saturday, but it'll be interesting to see realistically what he can do. Like you said, position battle is always key, and it'll definitely be key Saturday. And then sort of, again, like we suspected with the actually going to the kicker position first, since we're on the kicking game. Alexander Wozniak or Parker White. No starter named at the kicker position. Both guys still battling it out. Obviously, from what I'm hearing, it's not so much about no guy is, performed well in camp. It's actually quite the opposite. Both, I think we both thought it was Wozniak's job to lose, and then Parker White sort of comes out of nowhere about a week and a half ago and has really had a strong showing. So it'll be really interesting to see how that breaks down. I think Wozniak still would probably have the edge at this point, but they could get into a situation where maybe they use a guy for a certain distance, then another guy for another distance. I know Parker White's going to be doing the kickoffs this year, so that'll be really interesting to see how that plays out. And I talked about it before. We kind of previewed the special teams, but a team that I think South Carolina, especially early on when their defense is maybe still figuring things out, this is a team that's probably going to play a lot of close games, and not knowing who your kicker is can be sort of a nerve-wracking type thing. It might make play calls on, like, say, 4th and 2 a little bit more interesting. Line for field goals. Yeah. So the returner is kind of what we expected. Debo Samuel will be the main kickoff returner, and Chris Lamons is the main punt returner. And obviously, like I said, I think there's a guy named Jake Bentley playing quarterback. No surprise there. So with that being said, that's pretty much it for the depth chart. Like I said, some interesting tidbits there. Will Muschamp, a lot of different guys will play. I think he said there's going to be 9 freshmen that'll play on Saturday. That'll at least rotate in, not start.
Yeah,
so a lot of young guys that are capable. And I think the one guy that's not on this depth chart, Tyler, that I think has been talked about a ton and has a chance to make a huge impact is Aaron Sterling. He's a guy that I think a lot of people are high on. They're going to use him in pass rush. I don't know how much he'll play in this game or the type of impact he'll have in this game, but he's a guy that even Will Muschamp that has a ton of upside and is a guy that can get after the quarterback. So were you able to get kind of a view of him? I know it probably was tough at the fan, but not really. Okay. Well, I know that, like I said, the coaches are really high on him, and it'll be interesting to see what 15 can do.
Yeah, we need all we can get.
Absolutely. Yeah, we need all we can get at the pass rushers. So moving into it, this is NC State week. The Belk College kickoff game, as it's known, the game will be played at Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte, North Carolina. It's a 3:00 kick on ESPN. Tyler, the weather has been sort of a hot topic this week. I think everything's kind of cleared up, though, in favor right now. It's a high of 83, 20% chance of rain, so hopefully the rains will stay away. I think yesterday it actually looked like it was like an 80% chance. So the unpredictable weather in Charlotte, without a doubt, it's not playing some mind tricks, but I'm thinking and hoping we should have a pretty decent day for football, and I think that definitely helps with the high. It's going to be a fairly cool day for, early September. Really helps with the guys' conditioning, especially on defense where you're thin, staying, being able to keep guys in the game, staying conditioned, having your wind about you. So the line for the game, NC State, it's floated between a 5 and 6 point favorite. It's sitting at 5.5, I believe, right now. Over under is 52.5. South Carolina, Tyler, actually leads the series 27, 26, and 4. And I'm sure you recall their last meeting in Raleigh. They won 7-3.
7-3.
Led by Steven Garcia. 7-3 win in Raleigh. Beat a guy, Russell Wilson. You might know him. And then the year before that was the infamous 34-0 win in Columbia in 2008 when Tommy Beecher threw 4 interceptions and went 12 for 22. And South Carolina still pulled off a 34-0 win. So,
did you read the article I retweeted today about Tommy Beecher?
Was it the one from the state?
Yeah.
I read like the first paragraph and stuff.
Oh, okay.
I mean, with all due respect, Tommy Beecher, if you're listening, I'm sorry, but I have no interest in a Tommy Beecher story.
It was pretty good.
I really don't. I saw he actually lives in Charlotte, though. So it'll be interesting to see if he'll be at the game. So, I mean, I just remember I've never seen a quarterback look so stage fright my entire life than that night.
And won by 34. Thank you, Chris.
And won by 34. Chris Smelly with the relief.
Legend.
So, a little bit of injury report for you. Going into the NC State game, Coach Muschamp has said Taven Jackson will be out with a hamstring. He will miss the NC State game along with Jalen Dickerson, who's out for the year with a shoulder. Randricus Davis still having soft tissue problems with his hamstring. He is out. But, Tyler, the Gamecocks got some really, really good news and something I was really excited about when I heard. Stephen Montag will be a go for Saturday. His foot, Coach Muschamp said he was running around at practice, I believe, on Monday. He's good to go. So, Tyler, just the impact on him being available, really going to help out that Gamecock secondary.
I agree 100%. He played really well last year, and he played well in the late part of the season in those big games. So I'm excited to see what happens.
Yeah, and he's a guy as well I think is really bright. He came in last year at the beginning of fall camp and really picked up the system quick. And Muschamp said, he's the type of guy, he's a really smart kid. Him missing reps really isn't as important as maybe somebody else would be. And he's also very versatile. I think that's why, it's so huge he's going to be available. He can play safety. He can play corner. He can play the nickel. He can play really wherever in the secondary. So that's going to be huge to have him out there in the body to go against the Wolfpack. So speaking of the Wolfpack, they are coached by Dave Doran. He's 25-26 at North Carolina State. I believe in his fifth season. Breaking them down just a little bit, Tyler, the offense, they return 17 starters overall, 9 starters on the offensive side of the ball, led by their quarterback, junior Ryan Finley. Had a pretty solid year last year, 18 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, just over 3,000 yards, 60%. Tyler, I'm not sure if you were able to watch him at all last season or kind of look at any type of film on him, but from what I see, I think he's a solid option. I think he looked more of kind of, he's not a guy who's going to go out there and win the game for you. He's more of sort of a game manager. You hate to throw that term around, game manager, but I think he's more of a guy uses the athletes around him. He's not going to do anything crazy or wow you, but a lot of people are high on him to really take the next step this fall, and along with this entire NC State team, but take the next step and really be a solid option at quarterback. So it'll be really imperative that South Carolina get after him, make him uncomfortable, get some pressure on him. The Wolfpack do lose a big contributor from their running back position in Matthew Days, who ran for over 1,200 yards, 10 touchdowns. I would say, Tyler, if he was playing, I'd be very, very worried for South Carolina's odds on the defensive side of the ball. But they do lose him to graduation. They return a guy, though, Nyheim Hines, who is regarded as one of the fastest players in the ACC, really electric with the ball in his hands. And, Tyler, this is a little tidbit I heard about today. You know, he was actually not even recruited by Everett Sands, the old running backs coach. He's actually, I think, a local kid, wanted to be a Gamecock.
Wow.
Wasn't even recruited. So just
where's he from?
I'm not really sure. I could tell you in just a second. He is from Garner, North Carolina. So not really local, but I heard he did want to be a Gamecock. Yeah, so, you know, no need to get into the old staff. Their downfalls, I think we all know. At wide receiver, NC State, they return Jalen Samuels, who I think, you know, leads this group, although he didn't lead their group in receiving. That was Stephen Lewis, who returns. He had 39 catches for 678 yards, 2 touchdowns. But Jalen Samuels, Tyler, he's kind of the go-to guy.
Yeah, he's very good.
He's the very versatile. I call him NC State's Deebo Samuel. He's all over the field. He can play wide receiver. They can put him at running back. They can even put him at tight end, put him at H-back. He had 55 catches for 565 yards and 7 touchdowns last year. So that just goes to show you, you know, his explosiveness. It'll be really interesting to see how they match up with him, who will, you know, just cover him and how they'll be able to limit him, because I think he's the type of guy you're not going to completely shut him out or stop him, but you've got to at least limit, you know, his touches and limit, you know, his explosiveness. You know, also another guy, I know we just talked about it, you know, Nyheim Hines, who's another very versatile player at running back, but they also use him a lot at wide receiver. He actually had over 500 yards receiving last year. So it'd be really interesting to see how they use those guys in the passing game as well. The offensive line for NC State, the most experienced group, I would say they return 89 total starts, really similar to South Carolina in the amount of starts they're returning. Really big physical group of guys, and I think NC State and Dave Doran's teams are sort of known for a big physical type of style, running style especially, so definitely makes sense there. Getting to the defense, this has been heard a ton. I know, Tyler, we have heard a ton about the NC State defense all week, and that front seven. The strength of their team, you know, they return 8 starters on defense and really return one of the best front sevens in the ACC. All 4 guys up front are seniors. Led by a guy who really, I'm not sure if he's a preseason All-American, but if he's not, probably should be, Bradley Chubb. Had 10.5 sacks last fall. He's considered, Tyler, one of the best DNs in the ACC. And, I mean, it's just a really big physical group that's going to challenge South Carolina on the defensive side of the ball. They're going to challenge that South Carolina offensive line. You know, it's going to be a really early test. Linebackers, they return their top 2 starters. They were pretty solid. They lose one of their top guys. Like I said, do return 2 of 3. And Tyler, the secondary, this is where things are going to get interesting for the NC State Wolfpack. They only have 2 starters returning, and they actually lose Mike Stevens, their senior, to injury. He will be missing the South Carolina game Saturday. I think a really, really big loss for them. And I think this could be a really big area of vulnerability. As good as that front 7 is, you have so much to be worried about in that back end. Yeah. With the, you know, if you think South Carolina is thin in the secondary, NC State might be even more thin than the Gamecocks are. So it'll be really interesting to see if, you know, Jake Bentley and company are able to take advantage of that. You know, moving to it, Tyler, a little bit, just, you know, surveying the game and kind of figuring things out. Tyler, what would you say? We're going to look into key players, obviously, for each team in this game, the specific matchups. Who would you say right now are your key players for South Carolina going into the matchup Saturday?
We need 3 of them?
No, just for your key players, just for offense and defense.
All right. On offense, I'll go on the offensive line. I'll go Zach Bailey. On defense, I'll go Rashad Fenton, because I feel like Rashad Fenton is a guy that no one's really talked about all year, and I think this year he'll really come out and be one of those top guys in the SEC. So those are my two.
Absolutely. Now I know that Rashad Fenton really had a really improved, fall camp. And I know last year he sort of struggled in the beginning, but should be a guy that comes on. And yeah, I agree with you that Bailey would be huge. Mine for the Gamecocks, I think I'm going to start with offense. It's going to sound so cliche, but to me, it's Jake Bentley. This team rides or dies with Jake Bentley. And I think, he's caught a ton of the preseason hype, the preseason accolades. A lot of people are expecting a lot of big things out of him. It'll be really interesting, in my opinion, to see just how Jake will perform. And I'm very confident that I think Jake Bentley will have a great year and, just a great season overall. But against this tough NC State defense, he's obviously going to need blocking up front to, have that happen. But it'll be interesting to see how Jake Bentley plays and really what he has to show, the Wolfpack Gamecock fans in the country, since this game will be a televised game on ESPN. And for the defense, I really thought about this one, Tyler. I think I'm going to go with Taylor Stallworth, the senior defensive tackle. He's a guy that's caught a ton of praise in fall camp. Lance Thompson just described him as, our most legitimate all SEC caliber type defensive lineman. I think NC State will try to run the football against South Carolina. That's a big place. They were extremely vulnerable last year. And I think Taylor Stallworth plugging the middle, even having an impact. I mean, we saw what, a defensive tackle could do in the pass rush with Kelsey Quarles. I think Taylor Stallworth just having any type of impact, disruptive force in the middle is going to be really, really key for this defense. And, they're going to have their hands full. This, NC State is a really good team. On the offensive line and the defensive line, on both line of scrimmages. But I think, Taylor Stallworth could have that type of impact that could disrupt, NC State's timing, their offense. And, if you can get NC State into more so 3rd and 8s rather than 3rd and 2s, you have a really good chance of stopping them. So moving on, I think for me, Tyler, there are really 3 key matchups in this game. And I want to hear yours as well. But I'll start with mine and then go to you, and we'll kind of just go back and forth. We talked about it a little bit, To me, the biggest matchup in this game, Tyler, is going to be how does Malik Young fare against Bradley Chubb? And, I know obviously Zach Bailey manning the other tackle position, but Malik Young is protecting Jake Bentley's blind side. And we've talked about it a lot, obviously, that I think, I know Jake Bentley has to have time to throw. He's best when he's on his feet, not on his back. So it's going to be really interesting to see, does South Carolina keep a tight end? And obviously they talked a ton about tight end sets with Hayden Hurst and actually Jacob August, who's listed as the other starting tight end. How often do they have to keep 2 tight ends in? And if Malik Young plays well enough, will they be able to go into more of a 3 wide receiver set, maybe even a 4 wide receiver set? Bradley Chubb is obviously one of the best players in the country. They're going to have to get really creative on offense, I think, to slow him down. We talked about this, I think, a little bit last week, Tyler. I think they're going to have to, at least at the start of the game, really be successful in the screen game, be successful in the draw game. That's the best way to slow down a pass rush is get a defensive lineman sideways. So I think that Kurt Roper and staff will come up with a plan to slow down Bradley Chubb a little bit because he's another guy. He has all the capability in the world. He's going to get his, but if you can slow him down and make him second guess, not let him pin his ears back, because I promise you this, if South Carolina gets in a bunch of 3rd and 7s or longer, where Bradley Chubb knows exactly what's coming, it could be a tough day. So, and I think that's where coming in using a guy like an A.J. Turner out of the backfield will be key. But Malik Young, obviously, he played last year, is a guy, he played more so inside. This will be his first time starting at left tackle in a major game. And like we mentioned earlier, he'll be backed up by Dennis Daly. So it'll be really interesting, Tyler, to see just to see how Malik Young fares against Bradley Chubb and, if he's able to win that battle.
For sure. I think he can do it. He definitely has some experience under his belt. A thing that I like a lot about our offensive line, we may not be the best offensive line, but pretty much all of them have played different positions. So, I don't think that Kurt Roper or Eric Wolford would hesitate to switch guys around if they think that something's going south. So that's one thing I really like about the offensive line.
Yeah, and I think the Gamecocks really benefit with Eric Wolford, just getting him back in the program. He's a guy who's never been afraid to pull anybody or shuffle anybody around, or he's not been very shy about it. And I think that it says a lot that I mean, this offensive line came into fall camp with four positions basically solidified. I mean, the entire right side of the line, maybe a left guard, you saw a little bit of shuffle, but not really, with, Donnell Stanley starting there. I'm not sure if you actually saw, I mean, they've been talking about, Will Muschamp was saying that Sedarius Hutcherson is, playing in practice like the guy they recruited him to be the last 10 practices. So
I hope so.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just hearing that as far as a depth standard is amazing to hear. But, you've got Zach Bailey at right tackle, Corey Helms at right guard, Alan Knott at center. That's a pretty good right side of the line. I mean, those are three guys I think we really trust.
I agree.
And, you give Corey Helms a full offseason of lifting. You give Alan Knott a full season of lifting, and all those guys are healthy. I think it's going to make a huge difference for him. Yeah, it's going to be really interesting, though, how Malik Young fares, like I said, because Malik Young, I think, might be the most single important player in this game for South Carolina, because he's the type of guy, if he has 10 bad snaps in this game, it could make the difference between a win or a loss, just because of what could happen, the ramifications on those plays.
But can it be worse than Mason Zandy? I mean, I think anything.
Oh, no. Can he be? No.
I had to bring up the name.
Yeah. I mean, I love the kid, but man, that was tough to watch last year. I mean, yeah. Anyways,
I'm pulling for
what.
It can't.
Yeah, absolutely. What, Tyler? Was there? Before I get to my second one, what was one of your? Was there a key matchup you were looking for?
I'd be really interested to see what Brian Edwards does against whoever they put on him, because I feel like Debo is going to be paid attention to a ton, and Hayden Hurst is going to get a ton of attention. Shi Smith's going to get a ton of attention, because I feel like every time we get into the red zone, he's just going to get a jet sweep. So, or any type of just 3rd down and 3 or something, it's just going to be a jet sweep. So, I mean, I think Brian Edwards is going to be the guy that gets one of those weak secondary guys, and I hope so, because I think Brian Edwards will absolutely just school somebody. So I'll take that Brian Edwards matchup. I think he has a big game.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with you. That was actually my next one. I don't want to say that Brian Edwards this fall camp, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Tyler, but I feel like he's kind of the forgotten guy.
Exactly. That's the point I'm trying to make. Like, no one said anything about him, which has to be. Nobody's really talked about him, not even the coaches. I mean, they've obviously said he's one of our guys, but there hasn't been this, over glaring on the spotlight put on Brian Edwards. And like you said, I think it's a really good thing, but people may forget just how good he was last year. And I think the jump he's going to make from last year to this season, I think he's got a chance to have a huge day, because he's your prototypical, outside receiver. I mean, he's 6'3", 215 pounds. Like I said, he's got a year of collegiate lifting underneath him. He's a guy that could make a huge jump this year. And with that thin secondary that NC State has, I'm not sure they have anybody that can really match up with him as far as size, as far as speed, or anything of that nature. I mean, just looking, their two corners, they do have some height with their corners. They are both 6 foot, but you've got 6 foot 189 and then 6 foot 210, but both guys are unproven. And obviously Mike Stevens, their senior, not playing. So it'll be really, really interesting to see just how that plays out. I'm really intrigued. I think Brian Edwards could have a chance of a huge game, because like you said, he just seems to come off as the forgotten guy. Like, I can't believe nobody's talking about him. Right.
I think 89 could have a big day Saturday. One of the other ones I put, Tyler, it's going to seem pretty obvious, but wide receiver Jalen Samuels for NC State. How does USC's defense account for him? I think it's going to be really interesting to see. I think Jamias Williams is going to be put in a lot of situations where he's going to have to go one-on-one with him. I think that it's going to be really key, obviously, that pass rush. But how does this secondary that's a little bit thin really account for Jalen Samuels, what he can do with his versatility? How does the linebacking core account for him when he lines up, say, in in a tight end position, an H-back position? I think getting back the speed of Sky Moore helps tremendously. I think having the speed of Chris Lamons at safety helps tremendously. I mean, Will Muschamp has said this is a much, much faster team than a season ago. And, Tyler, I really tend to agree with him.
Yeah, I mean, I sure hope so, because there were so many times last year where we just got beat just speed-wise, and it's really frustrating. And after every game, we say, well, we got to get faster. We got to get faster as a team, blah, blah, blah. So if you give them a full year, there's no doubt in my mind that this team's going to be much, much faster and much more physical.
Yeah, and I wrote it in my position unit preview this past week of the safeties. With all due respect to our guys, Chris Moody and Chaz Elder, but I think in a race with an old lady, Chris Moody and Chaz Elder might finish second and third. There's too many times last fall we saw those guys just look gassed, couldn't really keep up. Another guy that, I've heard a lot of good things about that people really aren't talking about is DJ Smith at safety. Coming into his senior season, he's a guy that I think people are within South Carolina are really high on. They said he's had his best fall camps as he's been there. So it'll be interesting to see how he plays out as well. And, the thing that not really irks me, Tyler, but I find really, really interesting is that everyone wants to talk about this South Carolina defense. They're so thin. They're so young. They're so thin. They're so young. This South Carolina defense starts 8 seniors. I mean, they're really experienced across the board. I mean, you've got, just going down the list, you've got a senior with Dante Sawyer. So you've actually got 3 seniors on the defensive line in Sawyer, Stallworth, and Ulrich Jones. You got a senior in Bryce Noun Williams. You got a senior in Sky Moore. Then you've got 3 seniors in the secondary. No, excuse me. Yeah, 3 seniors in the secondary with Jamarcus King, DJ Smith, and Chris Lamont. So, I mean, there's no doubt this is a thin defense. There's no question about that. This defense is thin, but there's a lot of experience on this defense for what they have starting. Now, backing up all of that, you've got sophomore, freshman, junior, sophomore. A lot of inexperience. But I think this South Carolina defense is sort of getting an unfair shake for how green and how young they are. I think this defense personally, has a lot to prove and has a lot to say. They may not be great come week 1 or even week 2 early in the season, but I think, as I've said before, overall, throughout the season, I think they're going to show a lot more than people expect. Tyler, one that I didn't write down that I think is really intriguing, and you can think, but the development of Jamarcus King. We talked about before that he had a lot of trouble last season with bigger, more physical receivers. NC State does return their leading receiver, and that is, give me one second, it is Stephen Lewis. He is 6'2", 217 pounds. I imagine that him and Jamarcus King will have a lot of tussles come Saturday. And, Tyler, I think, while NC State's not like a pass-heavy team and, Lewis won't be the best receiver by any means that South Carolina faces, I'm really just intrigued personally to see how Jamarcus King has improved his game and how he'll be able to stack up as far as physicality goes, the bigger receiver like that.
I've seen he's put on weight. Assuming he got faster. I hope so because, there's some games like the Tennessee game, he looks like Darrelle Revis in 2007, and then other games he just looked pitiful. So I think he needs to be much more consistent and just try not to have those disastrous games like he had last year, like against Clemson and stuff like that.
No, yeah, I absolutely agree with you. Like I said, and that's the thing with a guy like, obviously Mike Williams was maybe the best receiver in all of college football last year. So it's a little bit of an unfair analysis on him there. But yeah, like I said, I know he's put on about 15 pounds of good weight. And obviously, last year playing his first year of SEC football, it's a little bit of an adjustment going from JUCO.
Right.
So it'll be really intriguing to see just how that plays out, and just how the South Carolina defense plays as a whole. Because while I do think, and we'll get to the predictions in just a second, but while I do think it's going to be a high scoring game, South Carolina is going to have their defense make a couple of stops, and it's all going to start up front. I expect Bryce Noun Williams, they're going to use him a ton. With his versatility to rush the passer, drop back in coverage. Brad Johnson's, I think, is a young guy to watch for. Obviously, we've talked.
That's another name we haven't heard a lot about in the last couple of weeks is Brad Johnson.
Haven't heard a lot about Brad Johnson. I don't believe he is listed. Yeah, he's not listed on the depth chart. So they've got Sherrod Green, Eldridge Thompson, and Antoine Wilder at the linebacker positions. But Tyler, I really feel like Muschamp, he's pretty much a guy to me that's going to give it to you straight. He's not going to BS around or sugarcoat anything. But to hear him talk about how confident he is in his starting 11 was definitely a breath of fresh air. I was like, wow, maybe these guys can play. I think he feels really good about the talent he's got on defense. Because I'm about to get off on a tangent. I want to save it for this. Tyler, South Carolina, NC State, it's a huge game Saturday. I think a ton on the line for both teams. I think both teams are sort of, have a lot of momentums with their program, a lot of positivity, a lot of reasons to be optimistic. But Saturday is going to go a long way in that in 2017 for NC State. There's obviously been a ton of hype on them. We've talked before. Cole Kubelik has them in his college football playoff, but a lot of other people realistically have them going like 9-3, 10-2, maybe pushing Florida State, pushing Clemson to go to the ACC title game even. And then South Carolina, obviously, I think in a wide open East that has the top two teams arguably are Georgia and Florida, who Georgia has tons of question marks across the offensive line. Their defense was suspect last year. They're obviously the favorite along with Florida, who we just learned is starting Felipe Franks at quarterback. Nobody knows what's going to happen with Florida. Tons of suspensions. And then you've got Kentucky, who, a lot of people are saying is on the rise, but is still, I think, right there with South Carolina and that trying to break through the ceiling right now, at least challenge those two guys. Tyler, for the Gamecocks to get a win on Saturday, what are some of the keys you think to the game for South Carolina coming out of Charlotte 1-0?
Like I said earlier, I think field position is going to play a huge, huge deal. South Carolina is going to have to find some kind of way to run the ball. They're all the cliche things we've heard the last couple weeks. It's just the offensive line, stuff like that. I'm interested to see how they match up physically with that defensive line. I know every Gamecock fan's tired of hearing about that defensive line, but it's such a big deal.
Yeah, that defensive line's a real thing. I think that's the only reason we're hearing about it over and over again. I think it's just like you said. I think it's going to come down to this is a line of scrimmage game, no matter what anybody tells you. I've heard a lot of people talking just kind of a position by position comparison of the two teams. Is that South Carolina is basically better than NC State at every position except maybe the two most important on the field, and that's offensive and defensive line, and which is not a very comforting thing to hear. I think, we obviously have to predict off of what we know from last year, and that would, give you the indication that South Carolina's offensive line isn't very good. Now, me and you, Tyler, having the knowledge that we know and, knowing the guys coming back and knowing what we know about this offensive line, I think they'll be much, much improved from last year. You can't get much worse. Like you said, I never knew losing a senior could be so beneficial. You lose Mason Zandy. No, but seriously, you got a ton of great talent coming back, 98 starts. I think South Carolina's offensive line, obviously that's going to be the key match of the game for me. If South Carolina's offensive line can give Jake Bentley time in the pocket, let him go through his progressions, it's going to be a field day, I think, because this NC State secondary is thin, and they are losing their Mike Stevens, their senior, is not going to help by any stretch of the imagination. Jake Bentley, this offense, we've been talking all fall, all season or all summer about Debo Samuel, Brian Edwards, Hayden Hurst, Shi Smith, Ortre Smith, even a guy like Chad Terrell, Terry Guger, of course. You just keep going down the line, this running back core. This South Carolina offense should be very dangerous. And I think one of the things I'm most intrigued to see is how do they use the running back rotation? You've got three really capable guys. Like we said before, Muschamp has said that Rico Dowdle will probably get the start, which I think deservedly so with the way he performed at the end of last season. And I'm really interested to see his development because Rico Dowdle, coming off a hernia with coming through in the middle of the season off a hernia surgery, the way he performed at the end of last fall was phenomenal.
I literally didn't know who he was until the middle of the Georgia game.
I didn't either.
Like, who is that running? He looks incredible.
I didn't either.
And then, he did what he did. And it was crazy. I think we were having a huge year. I think
we were all so caught up in David Williams and A.J. Turner, and this guy Rico Dowdle comes out of nowhere, and he was actually. I knew he was a highly thought of recruit, but I didn't realize just how highly regarded he was. All the North Carolina schools wanted him. South Carolina got him. And I actually learned today that Tyson Williams was a guy, he wanted to be a Gamecock as well, and the old staff didn't want him either. So South Carolina kind of got lucky there, got a layup. Well, Muschamp and the staff now realize, hey, this is pretty silly. We should probably get this guy on campus. I'm interested to see what he can do, just how they're going to use all these different guys. And then one of my biggest keys to the game, honestly, is Kurt Rupert.
Yeah.
How is he going to call this offense? Is he going to be able to open up the playbook? Is he going to be conservative? He can't. I just don't think he can be conservative. You can't be conservative with these players and these pieces, and I don't think he will. And then that kind of goes with my other key as well, as the ability of Jake Bentley to call protections and change the play at the line of scrimmage. I think last year South Carolina, with as young as Jake Bentley was, and I mean, you can't imagine he knew probably only 60% of the playbook. He wasn't really able to change the play at the line of scrimmage a whole lot, if at all, last fall. So being able to audible South Carolina into better plays, getting them out of bad plays, I think those are the type of little things that maybe people don't see, but are extremely beneficial down the road. They're, like I said, they're things you don't really notice, but they go a long way in just a team's overall development. And then obviously on the defensive side of the ball, it's going to be all about stopping the run, putting pressure on Ryan Finley, making him make mistakes, because I think he's the type of guy that will make a mistake if you do get some pressure on him and kind of throw the ball up. And, it'll be interesting to see. But a lot of people high on this NC State team, Tyler. We're going to move into our predictions, kind of score, Tyler, predict a winner. South Carolina, NC State, Saturday in Charlotte, the Belk College kickoff game. Who comes out on top?
Okay, so in my predictions from a couple weeks ago that I put up, I had North Carolina State winning. Unfortunately, I don't think the offensive line's gonna be able to hold up very often. I don't think it's gonna be as bad as the Clemson game was last year, but I think it's gonna play a huge role in how many points we score. You think it's going to be a high-scoring game? I don't think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think it's going to be one of those ugly North Carolina State games that we always have. But I will take South Carolina on the spread. I think they cover the spread. So if I have to predict the score, I'm going to go North Carolina State 24-20.
Okay, 24-20. All right, I do like your thoughts on the spread. I think +6 is way too much.
Yeah,
way too much.
South Carolina any day.
Yeah, I mean, I think NC State's catching a lot of preseason hype. I think South Carolina covers the spread. My prediction for the game, Tyler, as you mentioned, I do think it'll be a high-scoring game. I think that while NC State's defensive line is obviously extremely talented, they're going to get pressure on the quarterback. I think that Kurt Roper and staff know that. They're going to come into this game with a game plan to slow down that rush, like I said, with screens, with draws, something to slow down that pass rush. Using the running backs out of the backfield. I think that Jake Bentley, given that time, will be able to pick apart the NC State secondary, move up and down the field. I think that South Carolina's defense will struggle a little bit. I think their guy Jalen Samuels is a playmaker, and also at running back, Naheem Hines, he's going to get his yards as well. I think this one will kind of go back and forth, and really, Tyler, should be one of the better games of the opening weekend with so many good ones.
Oh, yeah.
I think the Gamecocks, I just – call me crazy, Tyler. I really am putting my faith and trust in Jake Bentley. I really think he's going to come out and have a great game. He started his 2017 off on fire. Look for Brian Edwards to have a big game. I wouldn't be surprised to see Shi Smith really show out. I think we were talking about this a little bit before. I'd love to see the first play of the game kind of sneak Shi out, let him go deep, but I don't know. We'll see. But I think South Carolina is going to make just enough plays. I think they're going to be a bend not break defense. If you remember from last season, Tyler, when this offense was struggling, I mean really struggling with Brandon McElwain, the South Carolina defense really played much, much better than I think anybody expected. I mean, really kept South Carolina in every
Carolina game.
Yeah, absolutely. Kept South Carolina in every single game they played. And really that bend but don't break mentality. I think South Carolina wins this one. I'm going to go with 27-24. I had it a little higher scoring earlier in the week and maybe last week, but I think the game will be about 27-24. I think South Carolina will have to kick a field goal, and I think they will make it. So winning 27-24 and going 1-0. So we'll see if I can we can prove you wrong, Tyler.
I mean, I don't think it wouldn't surprise me whatsoever if we went.
No, I'm just messing with you.
I know, but I really like 51-49 on this game. It's such a toss up, and it's gonna be such a good game. I can't wait to watch it.
Right. I mean, personally, I'd rather be playing FAMU like Arkansas is tomorrow, or FAMU like Arkansas is tomorrow. But I think it'll be a great matchup. It's going to be great exposure for South Carolina. Get into Charlotte. I mean, Will Muschamp said it's a huge, recruiting area to target for them. There's a ton of great players that come from not only Charlotte but the entire state of North Carolina. It'll be great for them to get on that national scene on ESPN. But I don't know. I just really believe in Jake Bentley and this offense. I think the defense isn't nearly as bad as advertised. I think they're going to get really creative with using Bryce Nall and Williams. I think they're going to do everything they possibly can to get a pass rush. And I think Will Muschamp feels really good about his first 11. Now, that is barring injury or anything like that, obviously.
Right.
But, yeah, I think he feels really good about his first 11, and I know it's obviously preseason talk, and everybody's 0-0, and everybody's optimistic, and everybody's high on every single position group. But I have to believe this South Carolina offensive line is going to be a much, much improved. And Jake Bentley, his improvement as well is going to help out this offensive line, being able to get them in the right protections, like you said, getting out of bad plays. So I think that'll be enough. I think it'll be a great football game, one of the best games of the weekend. So with that being said, we're going to move into a couple of listener questions we had. This one comes from Twitter at Doby1Kenobi. Love that Twitter handle, by the way. NC State seems to be only known for their defensive line. How do their cornerbacks and linebackers stack up to South Carolina's? Tyler, I'll let you answer that one.
I don't think they do. Both have severe depth problems. I think we have more experience. I think we're more talented, especially in the corners. I think our corners are more talented. But like I said, we'll see Saturday.
Yeah, and Tyler, I think it's kind of crazy we made it through this entire podcast without talking about a pretty good linebacker in Sky Moore coming.
Yeah, he's all right. He's all right.
Yeah, he's okay. I think that he'll have he's going to have a big impact Saturday. I think he's sort of a guy too. I mean, when he played, we all remember he was a playmaker. The last game that he played in Charlotte,
he
picked off UNC's quarterback twice. And that was a game, Tyler, I think, that was really similar to this one. I think North Carolina was catching a ton of hype. South Carolina was I think, way even thinner than they are now, had a brand new quarterback in Connor Mitch. Defense had some unknowns, especially after the horrendous 24 or not horrendous, but the 2014 season when they really couldn't stop anybody.
Letdown season.
Right, absolutely. So that game kind of similar, but yeah, I mean, I think that South Carolina has the overwhelming advantage at cornerback and in the secondary in general, and I think they do have the advantage just because you bring back Sky Moore at linebacker and you have Bryce Nall Williams, who's a proven senior guy that should really benefit from playing not only just linebacker but the buck as well, along with DJ Wanham, who should provide that. I
can't wait to see what TJ Brunson does in the middle. I mean, not in the middle, but everyone's been really high up on him, and he's just one of those guys that it looks like he's going to be overlooked with a great linebacking core. They have a lot of faith in him, so I can't wait to see what he does.
Yeah, he actually is listed as starter at middle linebacker, so that'll be interesting to see how he plays. Yeah, with all the hype he's caught in the preseason, I'll be really interested as well to see, just how good he plays. One more from Reddit, _0. I've heard that the Wolfpack secondary is thin, which is great for us. Agreed. But State also has a well-regarded defensive line, maybe one of the top 2 or 3 that we'll see all year. How do you see our O-line faring against their D-line? What effect do you think another year – well, actually, we'll answer that first. That's another question. Well, actually, they all go together, I guess. What effect do you think another year under Roper will have on the O-line, and what do you expect Roper to do to help give Bentley time and options to throw against their weakened defensive backs? Tyler, I'll start with this one. I think our offensive line, I don't think it's going to be the prettiest match. I mean, their defensive line is very, very good. We've said that over and over, and we've heard that a million times. But I think that they're going to have to come up with a scheme where they're able to get the ball to Jake Bentley's hands very quickly. They're going to have to run a lot of quick screens, a lot of draws, a lot of wide receiver screens, a lot of slants, at least early on to slow down that pass rush. And I think that's what Roper is going to have to do to give Bentley some time. And yes, they have a weakened secondary. If you can do that, sort of open up, I think the pass in this game may actually open up the run for the Gamecocks. And then, I think another year under Roper, it's just another year in the system. I mean, year 2 in the system, I think you're always a little bit better. You're a little bit more comfortable with the system. But Tyler, I mean, you sort of already touched on it. How do you feel about not only how the offensive line will fare, but what do they have to do to give Jake Bentley time to throw and open up holes for this running game?
There's got to be the guys that they've tried to be for the last year and get big for. I mean, there's no other game that they're going to be in the spotlight more than maybe Clemson. And I think they're both very similar defensive lines. But yeah, they have a sour taste in their mouth because of what happened at Clemson. It's one of those games where, hey, go prove yourself. You worked really hard last year. You said never again after that Clemson game, so back up your words.
No, yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you. And that is the one thing I think that's one of the reasons why NC State is probably, the favorite that they are in this game is that, you take a look at the times that South Carolina played their most talented defensive lines last year, which was Florida and Clemson. They struggled. I mean, there's no question. They absolutely struggled on offense. They could not – especially Clemson. They couldn't move the ball at all. Against Florida, they struggled mightily to do anything on offense. But, yeah, and I think they've got a ton of real they're going to have a real test. They're going to have a ton to prove on Saturday. But like I said, again, I do think they'll be improved. And I think Roper, like I said, is going to have to come in with a scheme. I think they know that. I mean, they've watched film. They're going to have to come into a scheme to help give Jake Bentley time. So with that being said, Tyler, a little bit of post-show because I wanted to ask you, besides South Carolina, NC State, what is the one game you're looking most forward to over this long, obviously, Labor Day weekend? We've got games from tomorrow till Friday, tomorrow to Monday. What's the game you're most looking forward to watching this weekend?
Oh, can I choose two that are on two different?
Yeah, go ahead. Sure, why not?
All right, I want to watch the Florida and Michigan game. It's two huge powerhouses. They're both kind of, I don't want to say not good, but they lost a ton of players on both sides. We don't really know what we're going to get out of this Michigan team, so it's kind of one of those unknown games. The other one is Tennessee and Georgia Tech. I'm really excited to see that because, you and I both have just kind of roasted Tennessee these last couple weeks because they were ranked. We're going to learn a lot about the SEC East this weekend. I'm pretty excited about that because a lot of good competition. None of them are conference games, so we're kind of going to feel our way out. And I think we can make a more accurate prediction on where South Carolina kind of fits in the East after this weekend.
Yeah, don't sleep on Georgia and App State either. Now that could be a very interesting game between the hedges.
I don't think
so. Hey, you say that.
I'll watch it 100%, but I don't. I think
you say that. Georgia only a 14-point favorite by the guys in Vegas. It just feels like a game where the Vegas is begging you to take the Bulldogs. They almost beat Tennessee in the opener last year. I'll tell you what, if App State they pull the upset, things will get really interesting in Athens for Kirby Smart.
Apocalyptic.
I agree with you though that Florida Michigan will be a great game. The only thing that I hate, it's a 3:30 kickoff, and our game's at 3.
No.
So yeah,
is
exactly.
Is it a CBS game where I don't have to listen to Vern Lundquist anymore? I might just switch it over.
I think it is a CBS. I'm pretty sure it's CBS.
I can't wait to watch the CBS.
Either that or ABC. Who are they? They're bringing Musburger on CBS, right?
No, Musburger retired. I don't even know.
No, that's right.
I don't even know.
I think Brad Nessler.
I like Brad Nessler. I watch CBS games.
Dude, yeah, he's awesome.
Where's the game at? Is it at Florida or at Michigan? I have no idea.
Arlington, Texas.
Oh, God.
It's a neutral site. Yep, it's in Arlington.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be on CBS.
That'll be I agree with you. The game, obviously, I'm going to go with the default answer. The game I'm most looking forward to watching is Florida State, Alabama.
Yeah, I want it to be different.
I think that'll be an awesome game. I've actually got Florida State winning it. I think that Bama's got a ton of question marks on defense.
One dude got shot.
I don't know if I'm – do what?
One dude got shot. And he was day-to-day.
They've had a lot of drama
on day-to-day. It's hilarious.
Bama defense. I just think that – I don't know if I'm picking Florida State because I actually think they'll win or because I have Alabama fatigue of them winning every single year.
Yeah, I think that's a more emotional pick than it is.
I think it'll be a great game, though. I think it'll be a great game.
I hope I'm watching it really happy, too, because I would hate to watch that game pissed off.
Yeah, I agree. Charlotte, will you be in Charlotte Saturday or not?
I was going to, and then the girl I was going to go with, she decided to go to the beach instead. And when I went to buy a ticket today, they were sold out. They were only $40. Man. The tickets were only $40 for students.
Well, just go scout one for $55. And
I don't know why I didn't just buy one.
In the upper. They still got them online.
Yeah, but I'm not going to be able to watch the other games if I don't go. I'm just going to sit here, watch the game, and then watch football all weekend. It's going to be great.
All right. I'll have to wait till week 3 to see you, I guess. Then. All right. That'll work. All right. Well, that being said, the next time, Tyler, we talk, at least on the podcast, we'll be talking about a game that already happened. So
can't freaking wait.
Officially over. Tyler, with that being said, or before I get to Tyler, again, please just make sure to follow us on iTunes, the Spurs Up Show. Rate, subscribe, tell us what you like, tell us what you don't like. If you have any questions for us, be sure to, you can post them there. But we appreciate all the feedback, all the reviews you guys leave. On Twitter, at ArmchairSCar, ArmchairSCAR. Tweet us. Tell us your feedback. Tweet us all your questions. We love getting the listener questions in. Again, on Instagram, at ArmchairSCarolina. And also, of course, go to Armchair All-Americans. Check out all our content, the South Carolina content, the breaking news there, the show, all of our other teams as well. Be sure to check out armchairallamericans.com. With that being said, Tyler, any last words going into the weekend? We've got football starting tomorrow, college football, South Carolina Gamecocks on Saturday. Any last words, sir?
I hope everyone's bets. I hope they win all of them. I hope you win your parlays. Hope you win your teasers. Hope you win everything, because I can't wait to fill out a parlay card tomorrow.
That's nice of you, man. That's nice of you. You have to send me your picks over.
All right.
All right. Well, that being said, as always, he's Tyler Clark, and I'm Chris Phillips. We'll catch you guys next week, and we'll hear from you soon.